Good afternoon, everybody. This is the second day of our webinars for Professional Care Workers Week. It's 16th of September 2025, and this is a webinar on financial well-being of care workers. I have a great panel with me today, Julie, Shannon, and Halida, who will introduce themselves in just a second. But first of all, I also wanted to say thank you very much for joining us and watching either live today or later on YouTube and sharing it with your colleagues as well. Right, introductions time. So I'm Carolina, CEO of the Care Workers Charity and a former care worker myself. And over to Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Burton. I'm the head of operations for a company called Twin Globe Care. We have an 83-bedded care home in Enfield, and we look after people from 18 years and upwards through a number of different categories, from physical disabilities to complex care, dementia care, and general nursing.
Thanks a lot, Julie. And Shannon?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Shannon. I work for Virgin Money. We work closely with the Care Workers Charity. I'm a business development manager at Virgin Money, specializing in healthcare lending, and banking.
Thank you. And Halida?
Thanks, Carolina. I'm Halida from Turn to Us. We're an anti-poverty charity. We provide accessible information to people. We have digital tools from benefits calculator, grant search, which hopefully I can talk more in detail. And I'm a welfare benefits specialist. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're supposed to be joined by a care worker today, but unfortunately she was called in for a shift, such as a life of a care worker. So we won't have a care worker voice on this panel, but rest assured we have lots of care workers joining us throughout the week. Just for background and a bit of context in terms of where many care workers are financially, late last year and earlier this year, we conducted a well-being survey on with over 2,000 care workers. And we got some, heartbreaking and interesting data on their financial situation. I think most strikingly, over 72% of those who responded to that question, of over 1,100 people, indicated that they didn't feel financially secure or rarely feel financially secure. And I think that definitely shows in our work in terms of financial support and grants that we give to care workers. Many are really struggling. We know from our grant work that many care workers are putting their regular monthly bills on credit cards, food shopping. They can't even afford the basics. Around 20% have to use food banks. Of those who responded to our survey, over 60% were on full-time contracts. So I just wanted to highlight that it isn't that all care workers only work part-time. But actually quite a big proportion works full-time. And over half of respondents to the survey were earning £30,000 or less. So this is some of the information from our wellbeing survey. I'm sure Halida's got some information stats from your work as well. But I think the general context is, apart from some very good and exceptional care providers that pay way and above of the national average, which sits around national minimum wage, care workers' financial situation is often quite difficult. So just around that, our first question is, what financial pressures affect care workers most, and how do these impact daily life? And Halida, would you like to come in first on that, and then we'll see if anybody else would like to speak about it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think I'll be mainly talking from the benefit side of the things, because that's my specialty. But I think from our partners and people we help, we are aware that many care workers experience low and fluctuating pay. And I think this causes a lot of struggles, for example, meeting basic living costs. And I think we do see lots of care workers relying on benefits to top up their income. I think the other thing we are seeing is probably travel expenses, which are like work related. Some employers do cover, but it's quite limited. Some of them do not cover at all. So I think that is that covers like a big chunk of their income. As you can imagine, like the public transport has been quite expensive compared to previous years, or if you're using your own car, fuel expenses. I think the other thing I can talk about is irregular hours. For example, universal credit, which is the main means tested benefit and most carers actually claim, it's based on your income. So it looks at like within a month, for example, how much you earn, and that's how it's based, like how much you can get. So I think it's a big struggle for many carers because they have irregular hours and they have to continuously report it every month. And that's an extra responsibility, because if you don't report it properly, people will get like inaccurate amounts, and most probably sometimes overpayments, and actually that puts people in more under financial pressure, I would say. I think there are like other responsibilities as well that causes financial pressure. Like we've seen single parents who are doing like care working, and this includes like paid and unpaid carers, and especially unpaid carers are they are hit the most when it comes to benefits, I would say, because some people have to give up their own like regular jobs and start caring of a friend or a family member. So I think all those things can adapt to all these financial pressures. But like I said, when it comes to benefits, I think we do see that universal credit is not providing that need care workers looking for. And I can talk about like carers allowance, which is mainly for the unpaid carers. That is also a big issue because that is just about national minimum wage, and we can see that people are still struggling even though they're getting that extra support, as a carer. I think that's all I'll be saying at the moment. So should I hand over to Julie or Shannon?
Yes, Julia, I think. Thank you.
Hey, I mean, we have a workforce of around 160. The majority, of course, are care workers. So we talked to our care workers and asked them what was impacting them the most. And a lot of what you've actually said was childcare, food, utilities, travel. And one thing that came up, which we weren't anticipating, was training. Because often, and having spoken to other providers, mandatory training is not necessarily carried out on days when people are actually rotated to work. So they raised this with us on the basis that it was costing them more money to come in. They would usually do maybe 4 shifts a week, and then they would have to find additional childcare for that 5th day. They would have to provide additional food. The impact of that was quite stark, really, because people had low self-esteem. Their general mental well-being was very low. They were incredibly tired because they were trying to do additional shifts to make up for some of the tax that had been taken or the benefit that had changed, which supports what Halida says, because they had earned extra money, so then their credits were changed and they weren't necessarily changed within that given month. So they could find themselves in a situation where their benefits suddenly dropped at a time where they hadn't got any additional monies coming in. So all of those things were things that our team fed back to us, and it was from that point forward that we started to look at how we could support their well-being, because we knew that their well-being was going to have a direct impact on sickness and the care that they were then delivering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. That's very helpful. And we hear a lot about impact on benefits from additional hours and difficulties around that. Halida, can I come back to you as the benefits expert? Could you tell us a bit more about that? How, if anything, can be done to work around that system? What are the consequences? I think the biggest problem is they're not always that clear to care workers at the time. It's only later on. So could you give us a bit more information about that, please?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, this new, but I know it's been more than 10 years since universal credit came into force, but it's based on your income, so it has nothing to do with the hours. But again, it means like if you do more hours, you get more money, right? So I think what people can do is making sure to report, or if their earnings go up or down, making sure to report this as soon as possible. With like, if evidence is asked, they have to just report everything, because if you don't, you might get underpaid, which is bad. You might get overpaid, and you will be expected to pay that money back, which I think is a big problem. And the worst situation is that you might get sanctioned, which means your payments will stop. And that includes if you get help with your rent. So you might go into rent areas, which is a big problem. Again, with childcare, you might be getting help with childcare or like other payments, other elements you get with universal credit will stop as well. And once you get sanctioned, unfortunately, it takes time for them to reimburse everything back to normal. So I think waiting for a few weeks will get you into a bad situation again if you need to make payments on time. Unfortunately, that's the only way that you can keep up with these. Like, you need to report everything on time. And with carers allowance, for example, if you're getting carers allowance, make sure to report your earnings. If it goes above a certain threshold, you need to let them know. Otherwise, you get overpaid. And even like with 50p, unfortunately, you do count as being overpaid. And recently there have been news around, I don't know if you have seen it, but there have been lots of care workers that have been overpaid, and they're being asked to pay like 2-3 grand because they were getting overpaid for several years, and they didn't know about it because it was just over 50p, and they thought that that wouldn't affect their benefits. And imagine having a quite busy life. You're a care worker, you keep visiting, like whoever you're taking care of, for example, you have children, you have other responsibilities. I think sometimes it comes in the last in your list to report these things, but unfortunately has to be priority. Otherwise, like I said, the payments might be disrupted. Yeah.
Well, following on from that point, in the UK, we all tend to have a bit of a stiff upper lip, and I can work through this and I can get through this, but any sort of financial institution is actually regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. And in doing so, we need to take consideration of that. So be proactive and tell your bank. Go into branch, ring them up and say, look, this is my situation at the moment. I'm getting universal credit, but I'm also care working. Sometimes it might be up, sometimes it might be down. There's all sorts of different levers and buttons that the banks can pull to actually help harmonize that for you, whether it's kind of removing fees and charges, which is what Virgin Money and Nationwide have done, because there might be an overpayment one week and an underpayment from the benefits. We've completely removed any sort of overdrawn fees and whatever else. But actively going to your bank and kind of saying, this is my situation. There will be times of the week, month, or the year that I might be vulnerable. And we take that into consideration and be really proactive and speak to your bank, because there's all sorts of other avenues that the bank can go down. Not only turn to us, which is who Leader works for, there's Step Change, there's Citizen Advice, and all of them are free and government approved as well. So you're working hand in glove. So you're getting the information from one part of the government to the other part of the government, which helps to harmonise. And you've got the bank actually advocating on your behalf as well. So being that, I know everybody's got a really busy life, they've got other commitments, they've got their job, they want to have a social life as well, but kind of take that time out for yourself before you're kind of in the pit of despair. Take that time out and be a little bit proactive for yourself and for your own well-being, and speak to the bank. Pick up the phone, go onto a chat, even go into your branch and explain the situation.
Thank you, Shannon, because I have to say the bank doesn't come to my mind as one of the first ports of call to the kind of explaining my situation and saying, you know, is there anything that you could help around that? So I think that's very helpful. And you're right, asking or explaining before things go wrong, being proactive about it. So thank you. That's very helpful. Now moving on to the next question. Obviously, pay is the most important thing around financial stability of an individual, and the Co-workers Charity, we have lobbied for years and will continue on around funding from central government of social care. We're on the task and finish groups for the fair pay agreement, and there's a lot of work going on there, but obviously that's going to take time, and we also don't know what the result is going to be. And we also don't know if the government is actually going to fund it, because whether it's funded by the government or not, I think it's going to give two very different outcomes of the fair pay agreement. So looking beyond pay, what other things, what other changes, strategies could put care workers in a better, more stable financial position? Shannon, do you want to come in as I've got you in the middle of my screen?
Okay. That sort of question is completely out of my realm. However, what I would say is for the government to keep championing organisations and charities like the Care Workers Charity and others in the area. So brought to top of mind awareness of the general public, so that people are aware that there are people, if not, they know within their family or their social setting, that are having it tough because they're probably unpaid carers or living just above that national minimum wage. To help people's awareness to kind of maybe give a donation to help out that other person, whether it's community-based or whether it's charity-based. That's the only kind of input that I've got, because yes, I'm in healthcare and whatever else, but when it comes to that sort of area, I'm not an expert, unfortunately.
No, thank you very much, and I think that's very helpful. Julie?
I think leading off of what Halida said and Shannon said, the big thing that came back to us from our workforce was, it's not about giving us more money. It's about what can we have that can help us right now, and giving us an extra £1 or an extra £1.50 an hour, which is then going to affect my benefits. It's going to affect my rent. It's going to affect whether or not I get help with my childcare or my school meals. So we took it right back to the drawing board, and we said, okay, our team, believe it or not, are saying it's not about the money. So what can we do? And that's when we came up with a whole set of different strategies that we could put in place, that the employee was not going to get penalised, and the money that they had in their pocket was the money that they could keep. And that's when we started looking at our breakfast clubs. So we started a breakfast club. It now runs from 7:30 in the morning until 11. It means that our staff can all have breakfast, so they can come to work, They can ensure that their children or co-dependents have got breakfast and they don't have to think about ensuring that they have a meal for themselves, because they can come in, they have a full breakfast. All the staff that are on duty and that are leaving their shift can also then go and have breakfast as well before they go home, so that it's one meal that they don't have to think about. That then led us on to looking at what food support we could provide when we were being talked to by our teams, and they were saying that just dread the school holidays, when suddenly, you know, they've gone from having support with school dinners to 3 or 4 very hungry children running around demanding XYZ. So we looked at, and I would say anyone that's in the chat group, if you work for a provider, go back to your providers and ask them what happens to all of the points that you get from breaks, from Creed, from Viking, from office supplies. What happens to all of those points? Because all of those points can be converted into Sainsbury's vouchers, Aldi vouchers, Morrison's vouchers. So through the school holidays, and also for any families that are supporting another adult, so a parent or a child at college, we provide food support during school holidays. So they have a choice. They can either have a food box, which provides them with 7 meals for 7 days for each individual. So if you've got 3 children, we will provide 7 meals for each of those children for an entire week. And obviously the 6 weeks holidays are an absolute drain on anybody. We either do the food or we give them the vouchers. So we collect all of our vouchers from breaks and other places. And some of you know, your carers will be working for really big corporate companies as well as individuals. And those points add up, and they add up to a lot. And if you could give somebody a food box and they know that they don't have to think about the fact that they're going to have to spend an extra 25, 30, 40 pounds or whatever it is on food for those children, that's money that they can keep, that they can pay for their utilities, or they can pay for additional childcare. We also use those vouchers for in the last week of the school holidays, when everybody's saving like crazy. And I know my position now is completely different to when I had my boys, because I brought my boys up on my own, and I was one of those parents that shopped in Tesco's and absolutely hated the fact that they brought out the blue and white stripy value tins, because that's all we could afford. And if I spent more than £25 on food for a week for the 4 of us, I knew I didn't have enough money for bills. So, you know, if you, with the school uniforms, we give them the vouchers, because it's easier for them to go and buy their school uniforms, for shoes. And we also do things like 0% loans, support with utilities. And the other big thing that, again, anyone that's in the group can go back and ask the people that they work for is, our chefs now, they will do their stock rotation, and anything that they have got that is going out of date within that next week, they bag it all up, they take it all into the staff room, and they leave it in the staff room for staff to come and just collect and take it home. So those are just some of the things that, you know, beyond what the person is taking home, it's about trying to take the weight off of an individual, so that they can still feel they've got good self-esteem, they're still providing for their families, but their benefits and their wages are there to pay for the essential things that they need, if we can support them with other things.
Thank you very much. And some really great initiatives there, and hearing about how you think in different ways, not just or we're doing this, so that's enough. I think looking at many different ways, and like you say, some of it doesn't necessarily cost you money, because collecting vouchers they would be getting anyway. This is the money you're spending anyway. So yeah, so that's really great to hear. We're working on refreshing our resources page and signposting page. So it'd be very interesting to hear about any tools around financial literacy, financial well-being, budgeting, that you are aware of, that you have. Maybe Halida and Shannon from Verdance, and turn to us, Julie, if you're aware of any as well, and that we could share with this webinar, but also make sure that they're definitely in our signposting page as well. Who would like to start?
Well, at Virgin Money and Nationwide, you can go into any branch and you get free Wi-Fi. We give out SIMs so that people have free internet access. We'll take people through their bank account. We'll sit down with them. We don't call our branches, we call them stores, because they're interactional. We've gone away from sitting behind a desk. Obviously, they're still there, but it's more people on the floor. What can we do for you? What can we help you with? But it's being that, as I've mentioned before, being that proactive and saying, please, can you give me a hand here? And it's overcoming that to say, look, I want some help, and I know the help's available. Go into any Nationwide or Virgin Money, and I also know Barclays do it. I'm not being kind of brand centric. Barclays have the Eagle something where they'll sit down and they'll actually go through the internet banking or a bank statement with everybody to help them understand. And at that point, they can also disclose. It's a great opportunity to disclose, look, my income is lumpy. There might be times in the month. And that's when you can get right into it. And it's that one-to-one rapport that you can get to kind of say, look, we've got you. Because the banks don't want to kind of, the banks are there, yes, to make income, but they don't want to kind of penalize people that can't afford or won't afford anything. They want to keep a customer going and progressing along that lifestyle. It also helps to make sure that any sort of mandates, or if you've got powers of attorney, that everything is in place, because you might be managing somebody else's money for them, to make sure that everything's smoothed off that way, that there's no further locks or blockages down the line as well. So absolutely, just go in, explain the situation, because most banks, building societies have that sort of demystifying. We're trained. We are trained. We've got training sessions, and we've got to update that every quarter in our mandatory training, FCA regulated. So yeah, absolutely. Speak to your bank.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And Halida?
I think accessing clear information is very important. Like, you never know what you need at what time. So I think going online and looking for information is the best way to start. I know it may sound overwhelming at first, but I think once you start looking, you will realize there are resources out there that are available to you. I can give example from our website. If you go to turntous.org.uk, we have a suite of digital tools. One of them is Benefits Calculator, and it covers England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So wherever you are, you can use it. You put in some details, and at the end, it tells you what benefits you might be entitled to. Doesn't matter if you're claiming benefits at the moment, you might be missing out something. So it's still worth to go through it. And we also provide personalized extra help information. So once you go through Benefits Calculator, so for example, if you are a carer and not getting carers allowance, we can tell you you might still be getting carers credits, for example. So things like that. Also, for example, if you have a disabled child, we do provide a list of things that you could claim, or like what's available to you and to your children. Our other tool is grant search tool, and I think that's another great tool that you can go through. You put on your postcode and in which field you work in. For example, we have social work and care section where you just tick that box and it takes you through a few more questions. We ask for your, like, for example, if you would like to share, you can tick a box with your energy provider, because some energy providers might have specific schemes for carers, for example, or again, if you have a disabled child, there might be specific schemes available to you. So at the end of the search and on the grants tool, it tells you what grants are available in your area, for example. So if you need like a new sofa that you can't afford, for example, there might be grants available in your area that you could, get a voucher and get a new sofa or whatever you need. So there are like specific grants available that you can find there. And we have a web chat where you can, put up your questions or what information you're looking for. And we have lots of benefits information that is available to like specific situation, like your circumstances. So all of them are available on our website. So please have a look if you like. They're all free to use and easy to use as well. Yeah.
Thank you, very helpful. Julie, can I go back to you? You said you do 0% loans to your team members. Do many people take them, and how are you actually finding they're working?
They do take them. Mostly it tends to be leading up to the winter bills, the winter utility bills. So what we do is we sit down with the team and we will ask them how much it is that they would like to borrow, and then we will put in a schedule for them which will say that the repayment would be over X period of time, and they always know that they can defer those payments. We've not had a single person who has ever not paid that money back. They find it really useful because they don't have to go through lots of checks. They don't have to pay high interest or anything. So for them, it's very much a case of, look, I know I said I'd pay £20 a month back, but can I defer it for 2 months, 3 months? I think the longest period we had for a defer was 6 months. But what it does is it gives the staff a sense of, it really helps their self-esteem that they are taking control of the situation, that they are managing it, and that they feel their sense of worth goes from below zero to much higher up on a percentage. And as a result of that, you get excellent retention. And I think this is something that care providers, they just don't see, and I don't understand why they don't see it. Because your workforce is the key to everything that we do. And if our workforce is not happy, our business will fail. You can forget your residents, you can forget everything. If your workforce is not happy in the environment that they're in, you will not get good results, you will not get good care, you will not get good quality. So focus on your team, your well-being of your team first and foremost. Listen to what they have to say. Everything else will fall into place.
Thank you. And that answers a couple of questions that I already had on the list in many ways. But I would like to actually ask all of you what you think. Obviously, we've got not so new government since last year. That's just done some shifts and changes, none of which directly really affect the HSE that much, apart from a new junior minister. But things are changing. We're looking at the fair pay agreement, hopefully in the future. What do you think is the most important thing that the central government can do to support care workers' financial well-being?
I think I have a few things, few suggestions. I think again, I don't know if they could do that, but I think one of you, I think it was Julie, who mentioned that care workers do complain about not being able to progress in their careers. So I'm not too sure if that will be possible for government, but I think employers should have a better plan in how to progress care workers in their work, to motivate them and also retain all these care workers in the field. So I think that's one of the things they might look into, maybe start free schemes where people can, train and enhance their skills, their experience. I think that's one of the things I can suggest. And the other thing, obviously, make sure benefits are aligned with cost of living. Like each year, we know that how the cost of living goes up and up, but the benefits amounts are not keeping up, unfortunately. So I think focusing on universal credit and carers allowance, and currently how carers allowance is working is not suitable for most carers, again, because it tells you need to be looking after someone for 35 hours or more. But again, carers, like, they work irregular hours. So one week it could be different, the next week it could be different. So I think some of the conditions, like eligibility criteria, should be reviewed, I'll say. Yeah.
Thank you. And it seems like somehow, obviously, it has to support a lot of people, but the system needs to be more flexible to individual circumstances, which it isn't. Because quite honestly, it does seem ridiculous to me to penalize people for going over whatever threshold by 50p. The admin of it must cost so much more than the 50p involved. Yeah. And going back to your point about training, there is the pathway that the UHC have developed. It's being piloted and is in phase 2 now. But it has never been confirmed by the government that they are going to fund pay differentials on that pathway. And that's something we've always asked for, because it's, great. It would be great to have a national pathway from our point of view that everybody, sticks to, and care workers know where and how they can progress. And that goes with them if they move across the country to a different employer. But with pay differentiations between different roles at the moment being 3 to 6p, maybe 12 if you're lucky in a lot of places, if those are not going to be funded, care workers are just telling us, oh, I've stepped back down from a senior care worker back to care worker, because the additional responsibility for extra 10 pence and that is just not worth it. It doesn't make sense. And I think that we're really stuck in that. Everybody's almost on the same, in many organizations, I'm not saying everywhere, but so many care workers are stuck on the same pay, no matter the experience. Somebody new comes in and get it paid the same as the care worker that's been there for 5-10 years. And that's very difficult for people to see, bad for morale, and one of the reasons that a lot of care workers tell us they're leaving, actually. So thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next. The cost, and I'm going to pick up on what you've just said, the cost of actually getting new staff in, training them up, the rapport that they need to build with the residents and or people that they're caring for costs a lot more than actually retaining the staff you've got. So it's indirect. What I think the government should do, they should help with that extra training, maybe some more education around that sort of thing to the care home owners or the organisations that are doing the caring, to actually retain the staff, to help provide the training, to help provide the willingness to stay within that organisation. Also, to assist the owners to kind of come up with, Julie, I think your organisation is amazing, and what you and your team have put together in all those different initiatives, to kind of think outside the box, so that one, the quality of care is there. Two, they're getting actual enjoyment out of their role, so they don't want to leave. And yes, pay is important, because unless you do get paid fairly, you're going to have to leave the industry and kind of, but that should follow, because in a symbiotic way, everything should be pushing in the right direction. So that's what I think possibly needs to be done.
Thank you. And Julie?
I was just going to say, I think it's taken us a long time to get to this point of understanding, what our workforce really needs, and we still make mistakes, but I think that from the government's perspective, there are simple things that we've talked about, like the option of providing travel cards for care workers, to support them to get to and from work, because every small cost adds up to a big cost. Removing benefit in kind for things like vouchers, because we use vouchers very, very sparingly, purely because they can be constituted as benefit in kind. Obviously we have a set of accountants that we have to satisfy as well, to ensure that we are doing things right. But I just find it crazy that to give somebody an Aldi voucher, £50 Aldi voucher, can be classed as benefit in kind. So those simple things, I think, would make a really big difference. The travel card for people, I think, would make a massive difference. As a provider, we are always up against it with regards to balancing the money that we have coming in to that going out, which is why we've looked at all these other different initiatives. But there are ways of doing it. And I think that, it's not just about the government. It is about us as a sector looking at what we are doing as a whole, and how we are ensuring that the people that work for us are cared for just as much as the people that we are caring for.
Thank you very much, Julie. That's very helpful. And exactly the same point I was just making an hour ago in a call with the HSC around care workers. Like, if care workers are not well, if they worry about food bills, we can't really expect them to deliver good, let alone outstanding care. It's just an absolutely unfair expectation, isn't it? So yeah, interesting point on vouchers and benefits in kind, because it is very different, somebody getting a 50 quid Aldi voucher and somebody getting a 5,000 corporate voucher or whatever else. And I think it's really, this comes back to your point around the kind of flexibility and looking at individual circumstances. And also, quite honestly, what does £50 give you anymore these days? You can't do a weekly shop for a family for £50. So reviewing, again, Halida, you're mentioning, reviewing values in line of cost of living crisis, inflation, the ever-changing world, and how much everything costs is just not keeping up with the numbers that we're seeing. And we have a lot of care workers that say, my bills have risen so much over, that increase was 50% from last year, and how are they supposed to manage that, etc. Any final last words from anybody before we finish for today?
I've just written something down, and I've just said, it's, for us, it's essential we understand our workforce, as each one of us is different and one size does not fit all. So having a carte blanche approach from the government to the whole sector is not something that's going to work. I would just re-emphasize, and I don't know where the people are from that are actually in the attendees, but I would say to them, go back and talk to the people that you work for. say to them that you've been on a webinar where a question was raised about what happens to all of the points that we collect from breaks. Who gets all of those hundreds of pounds? And it is hundreds and hundreds of pounds for foods that we've purchased throughout the year, for stationery that we've purchased throughout the year. Use that as a way of actually saying, you know, maybe we could use that to support each other. But I, you know, I will keep on my soapbox for as long as I possibly can to try and support initiatives. There are lots and lots of different companies out there, whether it's places like Bill's Place, which is a restaurant. We have a newsletter that we produce every month, which I'm happy to share. And it has an entire A4 page in it of places that you can go and you can get a free child's meal for every meal that you purchase, and money off. And I'm happy to share that with you as well, to try and support people.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Anything else? No. Well, thank you very much for all of your expertise, sharing information, good practice, things that we need to change. I hope that in a few years' time, I'm realistic, it's not going to be next year, but in a few years' time, when we do yet another wellbeing survey of care workers, the number of people goes down from over 70% saying, oh, I don't earn enough for the basic things in life. And we won't hear that still 20 or 22% of care workers are going to food banks because they can't afford to feed their families. And I think everything that you've mentioned today can make a difference. Best in, you know, multiple things applied at the same time for best results. And we will share the links with this webinar as well. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching and listening. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be shared on our YouTube channel soon as well for further watching and sharing. Thank you to Julie, Shannon, and Halide, and have a lovely afternoon, everybody.